Okay, everybody, welcome to our Tuesday class here. And we have a special treat for everyone. Not only is it a special treat just having Melinda Elmer anywhere, I get the special treat of communicating with Melinda Elmer about 7 days a week. So I win. Just so everyone knows, I win. But it's always a special treat to have Melinda do a class for our agents. This is an agent who's Grand Centurion every single year. Last year passed $1 million in GCI, and what was really interesting is almost $200,000 of that came from divorce transactions, working with divorce attorneys, building that relationship, and then navigating the transaction. And we get all the time, we're looking for some unique sources. How do I get involved with attorneys? How do I get involved with this? And no one, at least that I am aware of, certainly within our world, has done it better than Melinda Elmer. And she's joined all the different things that you need to join to get involved with attorneys. And I'm sure she'll go into very detail about that. But walking through her process is pretty amazing on how she generated this business, and then obviously navigating the transaction, because divorces can be, slightly difficult. So we are very privileged to have her with us. And so with that being said, I am going to mute my microphone and I'm going to turn it over to the person that we are all so excited to hear, which is the great Melinda Elmer. Melinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, so before we jump fully into this, I want to ask first, who here has had, let's say, a medium to high conflict divorce transaction that you've worked? Put a 1 in the chat box if you have. If you had a regular one where it was super easy, no big deal, was just pretty much like a regular transaction. Okay, good. 2. Okay. Good. So a fair number of you have had some high to medium conflict divorce cases. And now here's the next question of that. How many of them were absolute nightmares? Put a 10 in the chat box if they were an absolute nightmare. Okay, 8, 10, 10, 10. Okay, good. So maybe a third of the people who said they've done a medium to high conflict divorce case, and we've got a third to or so that was an absolute nightmare. So good. So that's what I'm here to talk about today a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So as you know, I am Melinda Elmer. I'm a certified divorce real estate expert, and I'm based here in Southern LA County, North Orange County, specifically in the Long Beach office. And today I'm talking about demystifying. Where's my slides? There we go. Divorce real estate. So I want to jump in. So right now, a lot of agents are struggling. The phones are a little quieter. The easy deals are gone. And everyone's chasing a lot of the same small pool of listings. So meanwhile, every year, 1 million couples divorce in the US. And nearly 2/3 of those divorces involve a house. So that's over 500,000 of real estate transactions happening, whether the market is good or whether it's bad. So most agents never see these cases, and because they don't know how to step into the space ultimately. And when an agent does, a lot of times they end up doing it poorly. Family lose money. It's a total nightmare transaction. And ultimately, agents miss an entire stream of business that the good agents who know what they're doing and who are trained properly can really be able to take advantage of this stream. Ultimately, this is not a market trend. It's a life event for these people. So we really have to keep that in mind. Now, how did I get into this space? Back in 2007, I got my first high conflict divorce case. Now, who knows what happened in 2007? What was the market like back in 2007?
Real estate meltdown.
Exactly. On average, we were seeing prices drop about 30% per month. So anybody who thinks this is a buyer's market right now, it was not around in 2007. Okay. We had over a 13-month supply of homes on the market. So I was selected to list this property. The wife was the outspouse, or she lived outside of the home, and the husband was the in-spouse. He was a security expert, ex-military, and had 2 large aggressive dogs and weapons in the home. Now, what would be the problem about this? Well, first of all, we listed it and he wouldn't allow anyone to see the home. Had security cameras all over home. He wouldn't even let people on the property. So the wife asked me to go to court to testify about him not allowing showings. Well, I said, of course, you guys need to get this sold quickly, because if you don't, your property value is dropping really rapidly. So my intent was to look out for both of their best interests and move the case forward. But guess what happened? I went to court and I testified that the husband wasn't allowing showings. Now, I did not get subpoenaed. I was not court appointed in either of these, in this case. So when I testified, the husband, who was self-represented, stood up and said that I was not representing his interests. And so I was removed from the case by the court, meaning they canceled my listing agreement. Now, while that wasn't my intent of going testifying, right, is to get fired from the case, I should have been subpoenaed. There should have been a whole bunch of different things I did differently to prevent this from happening, to document and evidence and to move things forward. But that's not what happened. So I should have been acting as a neutral and acting in both my client's best interest and taking both those into account. So I want to help everybody today by avoid making some of the mistakes that I made. Okay. So today, what we're going to cover. So first, I'm going to talk about what a CDRE is and what makes that designation different from every other credential in the industry. Then we're going to talk about the divorce niche itself, what it really looks like to work medium to high conflict divorce cases, and why it's not just traditional real estate with drama. And then we're going to break down myth versus reality. So this is where agents tend to get confused, overwhelmed, or are simply just unprepared when they step into some of these divorce listings. I'm going to share also why some agents fail in this niche and why others do really well. We're also going to talk about where divorce cases actually come from, attorneys, mediators, judges, and how shifting your mindset from chasing leads to being assigned to cases can change everything. And finally, I'm going to share what the next steps might look like if this niche speaks to you. So if you're interested in building a business that helps people through some of the hardest transitions of their lives, I'll help you start thinking with this plan. Whoops. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what is a certified divorce real estate expert? So ultimately, at its core, a certified divorce real estate expert, or CDRE, which I'll say from now on, is a highly experienced real estate professional who has chosen to specialize in the intersection of real estate and family law. It's not a weekend designation. It's not one that you go on and pay a small fee and poof, you have some letters to put behind your name. To even be considered, you need a strong transactional background. You need to know your contracts inside and out, and you need deep knowledge of your local market. And then you go further. So the CDRE training is an intensive 12-week training program through the Alumni Institute, and the acceptance rate is only 14%. They only select a very small number per region. So some of the areas, especially around Southern California, can be waitlisted. Be patient. Get in, apply, and then get in if that's something you want to do. All of this really mattered to me when I was looking at this program, because I wanted to know that, I've looked at other designations in the past. Most of them take a couple hours, a day, maybe. I could even probably take the test and just get the thing without even having to go through the material. This is totally different. So it was also, it's really just focused on that intersection between family law and real estate, and it's backed by the Alumni Institute, founded by Laurel Starks, who's been a court-appointed expert for over 20 years now. And that's all she does is divorce real estate. So actually going back for a second. So with this, there's an interview process and transaction requirements. And what appealed to me the most about this program too, was that I knew that if I got in, I was going to be surrounded by serious professionals who wanted to operate at a much higher level. The training itself really focuses on the space between family law and real estate, because the two industries, frankly, don't really work together very well. For example, I just got assigned a case this last week, which the court orders, all they really said was the property is to be sold and the parties are to cooperate. Now, these orders are 3 years old, and the one party lives in Cambodia and is basically non-reachable and is self-represented. There's all sorts of problems with that, but that is an example of where real estate and family law don't always play well in the sandbox. So as a CDRE, you're trained to be a neutral third party, helping attorneys, mediators, and courts moving the cases forward so that properties can be sold efficiently and ethically. So, okay, so we'll go to the next one. So divorce real estate by the numbers. As I mentioned before, there are roughly 1 million divorces in the US every year, and about 70% involve real estate. So this could mean primary residences, it could mean multiple investment properties, residential, commercial, valuation disputes, or the need to sell multiple properties. So divorce real estate is really different from traditional real estate in one critical way. It's not cyclical. So divorces happen every single day, not just in spring markets, not just when the interest rates are right. And often these sales are time sensitive. Court orders don't wait for ideal market conditions. Sometimes I get a case that says the property is to be listed in the next 7 days. They don't care if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. That's when it's going on the market. So while other sellers might pause, divorce listings end up moving forward. And that's why one of the things I love about this niche is that it offers consistency even in unpredictable markets. They talk about divorce, death, diapers, and diamonds, right? The primary reasons that people sell their home, not just from greed. A couple years ago, 2000, 2001, and 2002, we saw a lot of people move either because they needed more space because they're working from home, or because they could make a bunch of money by moving. So we've seen a lot of that calm down, and that's part of what has changed in the market. Okay, so why this is different? You know, I'm often asked, isn't divorce real estate basically the same as traditional real estate? The short answer is no. So some of these transactions can be highly emotional and highly litigated. Most of the divorce listings I handle are active lawsuits, sometimes multiple lawsuits. A divorce ultimately is a lawsuit, and that reality alone changes everything. So you're rarely dealing with just one client. You're dealing with two opposing parties, opposing goals, opposing timelines, the legal system, and potentially two attorneys. I can be called to court to testify, and that's not typical for most agents, but it's very normal in this space. I need to be able to prepare reports, testify, and understand how to do that. Neutrality is really critical, and boundaries are very critical. We are terrible at boundaries as real estate agents and do all sorts of crazy stuff for our clients. So the boundaries and the neutrality, and that leads to credibility with the legal professionals, and that's really non-negotiable. If you lose your reputation in this space, forget doing any work with the attorneys, especially in most of the markets that we all work in. They all talk, they all know each other. So protect that credibility 100%. Family law attorneys do not need someone just to open doors. They need an expert who understands complexity, consequences, process, and risk. So conflict ultimately exists on a spectrum. There are some cases which are collaborative. They've just decided to move on. They are working together to move this forward. Some are mediated, where they're kind of working together, but it's not as higher conflict, but they just need some help getting through a couple of hurdles. Some are litigated, and some are high conflict with restraining orders and non-compliance. So here's the key. Conflict can change throughout a transaction. What might be low conflict in the beginning may end up in high conflict. I've had cases where parties were completely cooperative and wanted to get things done expeditiously, but then that case can explode overnight. A high conflict case can suddenly soften towards the end. You might start out in high conflict and they may just want to be done at the end. I had one case where the wife was actually the one who didn't want to sell the home in the beginning. And then finally, she got on board with it. Then as we went along, we were in escrow. The husband now suddenly changed his mind and decided that he wanted to keep the property. And we ended up having to go to court to get his signatures to close. So often what's happening, and this is a really important key thing to remember, what's happening, one of my friends was just talking about yesterday, they spent 4 hours yesterday arguing about a used fridge, whether it was community property or it was included with the sale of the house and sold in separate property. So the refrigerator had absolutely nothing to do with the actual house or the transaction. It had stuff to do with everything else behind the scenes. So they could be doing support negotiations. They may be in custody disputes, or frankly, there may be something that we don't even know about because it's none of our business that is going on in the background. And that's why they're arguing or fighting, but it may end up coming through the transaction. I had another case where we were moving along perfectly fine. Everything was moving along easy. It was going great. And then we got to the end and it happened to coincide with a custody date that they had in court. And that custody became a battleground. Then the husband shut down because he lost all custody of his kid and he refused to move forward. In fact, he met with the notary and grabbed the notary's papers and flung them at her and threw her out of the house. So it became very violent and volatile. So our job as real estate agents in a divorce case is not to fix that. Our job is to manage the transaction within it. Okay. So my role is a neutral. So let's talk about this for a second before we get to this part. So as a certified divorce, well, one example first. So here's another case where acting as a neutral. So I have a case that is coming up here soon, and the out spouse is the wife. She is the titled party. Now, quick quiz here. Who is the person who is responsible for the property? Is everybody involved in the property? So I've got
Whoever's
the
on
outspouse.
title.
I've got the outspouse who's on title. The in-spouse who lives in the property is not on title. So who should I be talking to?
Whoever's on the title.
Both.
It's a community.
Yes and no.
The attorney?
Okay, good.
Outsource.
I love this. See, we don't really know, right? In many cases. So responsibility wise, the titled owner is the only one who signs any documents or does anything. However, the property is still community property within this divorce. So, and in fact, the husband has filed a lis pendens against the property. So he lives on the property, they filed a lis pendens. We can't sell this property until the lis pendens has been removed. So he is able to control his portion of the property, even though he is not the titled owner of the property. And so I have to work with the attorneys to get them to move past that portion of things so that we can actually put the property on the market. Okay. But in my listing agreement, I give permission for me to be able to speak to the non-titled party to communicate with him because I need to be able to get in the property. Otherwise, I just have a hostile tenant situation. And that's not really a good situation for anybody either. So really important to know. So as a certified divorce real estate expert, I'm trained as a third party neutral. And even if you're not a certified divorce real estate expert, you want to really understand that you owe a fiduciary duty to both parties in the sale. Even if you think one of the sellers is a total scumbag or one is a total bitch, right? It does not matter what your feelings are about these sellers. Your job is to move the process forward and help them comply with the orders that they have. Okay. That means ultimately we don't take sides. I don't referee emotions. And frankly, I don't let them dump their story on me. I don't need to know all of the background of what they did to each other. That is not important to moving us forward. I'm always focused on keeping people moving forward. I do not carry messages between ex-spouses. I don't tell them that they have to pick up their kid from the other person's house or that they were late. That's not my job, right? So I have a very specific process for these divorce listings, and it's completely separate from how I run my traditional transactions. So in a, Mike Ferry traditional presentation, I go to the listing appointment with them both there. I walk through everything with them, ask them to sign the contract. My process is very different. I do an intake with both the parties first. Then I do a walkthrough. Typically, I don't want both of them there. First of all, there might be restraining orders. But second, I want to just be in and out of the property. And then I do my listing presentation separately on Zoom with each party. And then I send out the contract to be signed. So it's a very different process because I don't need to create more conflict by bringing the parties together. I did it once. I said, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to do it the Mike Ferry way. And it was the first time the wife had seen, this was a low conflict situation. It was past clients who were getting divorced. And the whole time I was doing this listing presentation, I had both of them on Zoom with me. The wife was just sobbing because it was the first time she'd seen her husband since he decided to leave. Now, was she really paying attention to me? No, she was not. And it killed me because she was just sitting there sobbing the whole time. So I learned very quickly that it was much better to do separate presentations. Okay, so ultimately this process protects me. It also protects the parties. If they've got restraining orders, they're not violating orders. And it creates a lot of clarity. It does give each person a chance to tell their story without having to filter it in front of the other person who they may or may not be in conflict with. I also explain to each party individually that they don't need to agree with their ex. They need to agree with me on the process. I'm going to make recommendations. They can agree or disagree, but I will make recommendations. And then my job is basically to mediate between the two parties to bring those recommendations together. And often I find that you can feel the relief that people have when they realize that selling the house does not have to be another battlefield. Okay. So 5 things to stop doing right now. So if you work with divorce listings, this really matters. So first of all, stop disclosing that a property is a divorce sale. Anybody hazard a guess as to why that might be a problem?
People will come in and lowball.
Everybody thinks it's a distress sale, right? Now, is every divorce sale a distress sale? No, they're not. Now, what about fair housing? What is marital status a protected class? The answer is yes, it is. So and I had this happen, we were showing a property and an agent was holding the open house. We walked in and the agent says, "Oh, this is a nasty divorce sale." What is the first thing my buyer says? I'm going to get a discount, right? Or they say, I don't want to make an offer because I don't want all the drama, right? So do not disclose that it's a divorce sale, okay? We are trained to disclose everything, but in this case, it is not your information to share. So many times in a divorce sale, they could keep the house. They could do a buyout. So we don't want to bring that information into the case. Okay. Divorce listings are not inherently distressed, and marital status should not be used against the seller. If buyers figure it out later, that's different, but it is not our role to broadcast it. There are going to be cases, I mean, it's public record. If the seller goes online the buyer goes online and looks stuff up, or I've had cases where I've had to go to court to fight over repair requests or things like that. They're probably going to figure it out because it takes a lot longer and you have to bring in attorneys and things like that to move things forward. But we don't have to bring that up first thing. So second, stop chasing divorcing couples. I'm just curious, put a 1 in the chat if anybody buys divorcing leads. Okay, we got 1. Anybody else? Okay. So cold calling people who have just filed for divorce is very dangerous. So you don't know what's happening behind the door. There are real safety implications. And I've seen firsthand how these single careless calls can escalate a situation. So one of the attorneys on the alumni staff gave us an example of a situation. And there was a woman that our staff attorney was working with. She was being abused and isolated. And if you're sensitive to this, mute me for 2 seconds. So this woman got pregnant. She had the baby and the abuse continued. She now feared for her child's life and decided it was time to change. She worked with her attorney to come up with a plan because she was isolated and she needed a place to go. The divorce was filed, but the husband had not yet been served. So there was a realtor who was gung-ho and ready to make those phone calls, which I cold call every day, or I call every day, right? I prospect every day. So I get this. But he called the husband, and the husband figured out as a result of this call that she'd filed for a divorce. Now, the husband exploded on the realtor on the phone. And then when the wife came home, he exploded on her. Luckily, she was able to get out, and the baby and her were both safe. But what if she hadn't been so lucky? There is a better way than calling new divorce filings. So build relationships with the family law community. Let them come to you. Okay. Stop sending attorneys real estate spam or market updates. They cannot stand it. Right. One of the things that they say to me on a regular basis is, I love that you sound like you're an attorney. So I've learned the lingo. I can speak the language that they speak, and I don't send them recipe cards. I don't send them neighborhood statistics. I give them valuable information that is helpful. So, for example, when Sister Burnett happened last year and the commission structures changed, attorneys were still putting in their orders the commission to be 5 or 6%. Now, I actually saw that an agent said, okay, great, I'm going to take advantage of that. And they wrote their listing agent commission in at 6%. So they needed some education and is able to bring that education to them. Let them come to you and by bringing them good information. Also, stop introducing yourself as a regular realtor. If you are going to get into this space with the attorneys, you need to introduce yourself in a way. So I introduce myself as a certified divorce real estate expert. I do not say I'm Century 21, I'm sorry, but I don't say I'm with Century 21. I say I'm a certified divorce real estate probate. When I'm with a probate and trust attorney, then I say I'm a certified probate and trust specialist, right? So I gauge my audience and I introduce myself where my audience is, okay? Then I'm gonna pull up my chat again really quick. Hang on, give me a second. Okay, there we are. Okay, here we are. Where'd my slides go? Nothing like stopping in the middle of your presentation. Okay. Okay, so stop flooding attorneys with contracts and irrelevant correspondence. So I had an agent ask me this question last week. Should I send the listing contract and the purchase agreement and all the addendums and disclosures to the other agent? Why would we not want to do that? Any guesses?
Because it's not their job.
Yes,
And
it's not
billing?
their job. And they're family law or probate or trust attorneys. They are not real estate agents or they're not real estate attorneys.
Yeah, I
They
thought you
don't
were the
know.
only one.
They don't know our contracts,
Yeah,
right? So on top of that, how much do attorneys charge per hour?
a lot.
So they charge on average $400 to $600 per hour.
Wow.
And you know what? They bill every 10-minute increments. So that email that you just sent the attorney, if you just send an email to an attorney, it's going to cost your client $100. So now you send a contract that they have to review that's 28 pages long. That's going to cost several $1,000s potentially for them to review it because they don't know the contract. They're going to have to dig through it if you send it to them. So do not send them the contracts. That's not our job. Our job is to remove the headache, not create one. Okay. Okay. So what you should know before you enter the divorce niche. Now, if you take this training class, the CDRE training is a deep dive. It takes time. Well, it's a 3-month, this class is a 3-month training class. There's live sessions, there's homework, there's mock trials, and building attorney trust takes a lot of consistency. But you have to know that this takes time. Many agents who enter this space don't see results for a year or more. It's a business to business system. It took me almost a year before I started seeing results of the work that I was doing. And I was doing it very consistently and exactly what they said. And I actually started getting business faster than some of the other people, just because I already had some connections in the space. So the training that is provided from this is invaluable, but it's also never ending. So even though I became certified in early 2024, I still go to training every single month. I do 5 hours of training with them every month. Plus, like Robert said before, I went to the American Association of Matrimonial Lawyers conference in San Diego last week, or a couple weeks ago. I'm going to the AFLS, which is the American Federation of Family Law, in Rancho Cucamonga in a few weeks. So I'm going to these events. I attend their MCLE classes. They have continuing education classes too. So I attend a lot of these classes so that I can speak the way they speak. Right? Ron Cronin says that all the time, speak the way they speak. I'm doing exactly that, right? Patience. The other thing, some of these cases takes months or even years for divorces to finalize and for the properties to be sold. So even though there's a lot of predictable results and there's predictable referrals, it's not about leads. It's about positioning yourself as an expert so that you can build that trust with those attorneys and they will send it to you. I tell you, I get calls from attorneys all the time and they're like, oh, I have a case for you. But I don't hear anything for 6 months, 7 months about it, right? They might give me a few details. I'll check back with them, but it takes time. So do not expect that this is something you're going to get right away. My business has become more diversified now than it has ever been. In 2007, most of my business came from expireds. And then as expireds dried up, then it was mostly past clients and center of influence. Over the last couple of years, with interest rates being higher, a lot of my past clients are staying in houses longer. I'm sure many of you are experiencing that as well. I've had a couple of past clients recently tell me they felt trapped in their homes, right? And I always have ways to help them. But attorney business now has become a large, steady portion of my business. What sets CDREs apart is that divorce real estate is largely B2B. It's not consumer facing. And attorneys bring me into these cases because they trust my process. And that trust is everything. So in the past, I've gotten a lot of, I talked about this a little bit, so I'm not going to go too deep into this again. So right now, my goal is to be assigned in cases by judges and attorneys. Also getting named in a marital settlement act. That's my favorite one, because that usually means I get a phone call from an attorney and they say, hey, we just wrote you into some orders. The property needs to be listed by next week. Right? Now, I don't know when those are going to come in, but it's become duplicatable and predictable because over time I've built those relationships up and I can act as a court appointed expert. So building credibility, you can join local law groups. Now, there are some bar associations. Orange County Bar Association, for example, is a closed bar. You cannot join it unless you have a JD. So it's not going to happen. But there are periphery groups that you can join as well to connect with attorneys. You can speak at attorney networking events or sponsor them. I usually get great results every time that I go and speak at attorney networking events and give them valuable information. Again, I'm not selling them on my skills. I do that by speaking intelligently about problems that they need to solve. You can apply to teach CLE classes, continuing legal education classes, which is the MCLEs I talked about. And again, be visible, but never be salesy, because they see right through that and it drives them crazy. Attorneys really want legal-minded professionals. They want neutral, ethical, and court-savvy experts. They don't want you to bring a bunch of, they don't want to feel like they're being bought, if that makes sense, right? Like, I might stop by with a little something for them to get an initial introduction to them, but they don't want to feel like they're being sold to. They don't want to, their ethical standards actually won't allow them to if they feel like that's happening. So you have to be really careful about that. They want somebody who's presenter of fact, not persuasion. So I had a case last year where two women were divorcing. And every time something came up, it was a massive conflict. The one, we got a repair request for $20,000 because there were foundation issues on the house. The one spouse wanted to do $300 in a repair credit. Too bad. She wouldn't let me do a pre-sale inspection. So all we did was let the buyer do their own inspection. The other seller wanted to give them the whole thing. Now, what do you do in that case? Well, I tried to negotiate with both parties to get them to be in the same place. I recommended that they go back to the buyer and offer them like $5,000. But when it came down to it, we finally only sent them a repair request back for $300 because the one spouse would not budge off of that. Now, because they came back with such a small amount, the buyer got stuck on $17,000 and that was it. And if they didn't get that, they weren't moving forward. And because they didn't feel like we were negotiating in good faith. So I had to go back to the attorneys and we had to go file ex parte to get things to move forward. They were able to do it at the 11th hour and get an agreement and work something out on the back end. I don't even know all the details. All I know is that the buyers ended up getting $17,000 in a credit. However, with all of that, both attorneys called me and said, what do you recommend? What do you think is going to make this move forward? And I had originally said 5 because I thought it was a place to negotiate. And I had to explain to an attorney why now I changed my story from 5,000 to 17,000. Frankly, because the buyers were going to walk away if they didn't get 17. So in that kind of situation, it was presenting facts. I didn't say, well, she's being an idiot and only offering $300. And this one wants to give them everything, right? It was, these are the facts. What do we need to be aware of? Attorneys want realtors who understand title issues, court orders, marital settlement agreements, and domestic violence and ATROs. Anybody know what ATROs means by chance? If you haven't gone through a divorce, you probably don't know. It's an automatic temporary restraining order. So when you file for divorce, all of your assets are frozen. You cannot change anything. You cannot change ownership on bank accounts. You cannot change your life insurance policies. You cannot change any of those things. So you need to be aware that the ATROS is a thing. You don't have to do anything about it. You just have to be aware of it. Okay. So the divorce niche is complicated, but ultimately that's the opportunity. This work's not easy. It's complex, emotionally charged, and I mean, ultimately it's human. A lot of times we have access problems with one spouse, signature refusals, restraining orders, title disputes, court-held proceeds. One of my cohorts, they have put 4 women in homeless shelters after selling the homes because the court held all the proceeds and they couldn't get to any of the funds. So sometimes we can be advocates and say, hey, guys, we need to get some money to be able to put these people into a house after they close, because otherwise they have no funds, right? And sometimes that helps some of the sales sabotage as well. Ultimately, we don't run from drama, we manage it professionally. So if this sounds interesting to you still, and I haven't scared you off, if you're purpose-driven, you want to serve a vulnerable population, and you are really coachable and willing to learn the legal side of the industry, this niche can be really meaningful. I love it. I love the puzzle of all of it and the trying to figure out how to move them forward faster. If you're just looking for more leads and you don't want to learn the legal language and you don't want to collaborate or testify in court, or attorneys scare the crap out of you, don't do it, right? Don't do it. It's not worth it. Okay, so where do you go from here? If you want, so a really great first place to start, if you want to learn more information, is the Divorce Niche Bootcamp. It's an entry-level course. If you type in Divorce Niche Bootcamp, it'll pop right up. You can apply for the CDRE program if you're interested. www.getdivorcecertified.com. You can go on my LinkedIn and see what some of the posts are that I do are targeted. Mostly my LinkedIn is targeted towards attorneys. I don't think regular people really look on there for real estate agents, in my opinion. So I target most of that towards attorneys because that's where they are. You can email me if you have questions, and you can also go on the Alumni Institute website to check out more. Any questions that you guys have?
Hey, I wanted to say thank you so much for this. This has been so much value. It's something I'm definitely interested in, but I have a couple of questions in regards to the things that you have brought up.
Yeah.
One of the first, my name is Kamai, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Kamai. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So one of the questions was, you said that it can take quite some time for these escrows to close.
No, not necessarily the escrows to close, but from the time an attorney calls me and says, hey, I have a case I'm working on for you. I mean, I have a divorce client who's been going through the divorce for 4 years now.
Got it.
They're not anywhere close to resolving the real estate piece of it. They're finally divorced now, but they're still fighting over the house.
Right. So within that, you may have a few of those at one given time. For you personally in your business, are you doing other type of real estate transactions to kind of keep the cash flow coming in, or are you solely on divorce?
I am about 25% of my business is real estate. I mean, is divorce real estate.
Okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then the second question is, when these attorneys and the judges and the courts come to you and they assign you pretty much cases, are the sellers able to say, no, we don't want you as a realtor, or is that kind of just it's done deal once you're assigned?
So it depends. There are some cases where I am appointed by the court. They do not have an option. I am the one who's selling the house, period, the end. Those are my favorite ones. Although they're generally higher conflict. There are also cases where an attorney comes to me and says, the attorneys come to me and say, hey, we want you to sell this house. And I'm like, great. And I have what's called a stipulation. No, I can't share it with you. But I have a stipulation I send off to the attorney. I say, great, here, sign my stipulation, which is what gives me a little bit more authority to work for the court instead of them. So that's just kind of like the parties agree, hey, sure, we'll use Melinda. Or sometimes what traditional family law has said in the past is they'll put down 3 names. So they'll say, here are 3 names of 3 different, one party will say, here's 3 names, and they'll send to the other party picks. Those are a little trickier because, frankly, a lot of times of the 3 names, one of 2 things happens. One, the attorney who's sending the names over, they're going to try to pick 1 good agent and 2 shitty agents. So then they send it to the other party, and then sometimes the other party, they look for the agent who they can manipulate the
Great,
most.
thanks.
Which is generally
We'll
not
check with
me.
him.
So my job is to try to convince them, hey, I'm in your best interest. I'm here. I can save you a lot of time, energy, and effort by working with you. But I don't always get those, right? So, but hey, I got a 1 in 3rd chance at least on that particular one. So it depends. Sometimes also there's daily settlement officers. Sometimes the daily settlement officer is an agent, an attorney who knows me and says, hey, if you guys don't have an agent, then you should use Melinda. Things like that. So it depends. They can come with me in different ways.
Copy. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah. I'm generally not, other than my past clients, I do get some from my past clients where, because I do talk about it in social media and my emails and things like that I send out. So I sometimes will get past clients who call me and say, hey, we both still trust you, so we want to have you helping us with this sale. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question. The ones that you're talking about, don't buy the leads from them. Would it be like Smart Agents and Charles Curry where they have divorce listing workshops?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't, after I heard that story, I was like, I am not, and I watched someone I know go through a similar thing where they filed for divorce but didn't pay for it yet. So it went
In
into
a
the
while.
court records. And guess what? Like 2 days later, they started getting mail from attorneys saying, do you need somebody to represent you in your divorce?
Yeah, I've heard people knocking on the door too.
She was terrified because she hadn't served her husband yet. She was terrified. And she thought, oh my God, like this attorney is already sending me, are they sending him mail too? Like what? She was mortified and terrified and was in total tears that this happened. So don't be that person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is
All
the
right,
best way to get certified.
good question.
Right?
Hey, Kami, which office are you from?
Hey, what's up, brother? I'm Santa Cruz, Valencia.
Awesome. All right, good. Glad to have you
He's
here.
in my office.
What?
He's in our office in Valencia with Alex.
How cool.
Fred Chazartes.
Good. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. They gave me a job to do and
Santa Cruz
Trying
is
to
where I
do
grew
it.
up.
And
Really?
Listen
Well,
to
let's
you.
talk
Yes.
about Santa Clarita then.
Tess has a question.
I walk by her house every day almost.
I have a quick question for you. And first of all, thank you so much. This is a lot of information. Now, when you get approached by somebody, not necessarily from an attorney, okay, do you counsel them first? Because most of the time, in my experience, when they're saying they're having a divorce, I want to keep the house, I want to keep the house. Now, do you actually get them, you counsel them? Number one is, are they qualified?
What do you mean by counseling them?
Meaning that when let's say the wife wants to, okay, I want the house, okay, but there's a loan. This has happened to me in one situation. It has a loan, and unfortunately, the wife is not working, right? So she's saying that, okay, I'm able to afford it, but I want my parents to be able to work it through. Unfortunately, the parents don't own it. Do you actually ask typical questions first, getting them qualified, see the loan will happen for those people, or how does that work? Or do you
So
go
yes, I have a pre-qual, just like I do with my friend. It's a little different because it's asking questions like, do they have restraining orders in place? Where are they at in the process? Do they, what are their plans? Now, if I have a court order that says the property is to be sold, no, I am not counseling them.
Oh, okay.
First of all, I'm not a counselor. That's not my job. Boundaries, remember? But I had a case not that long ago, and I walked into the property. I had court orders. It was to be listed in like 8 days. So it was super fast. I had to go see the property, do my intake with both parties. I went to property. They're both still living in the house together. They've been married for like 40 years. And she was absolutely adamant she was keeping the house. I had court orders that said otherwise, right? My job is not to judge whether those are right. But in this particular case, both the attorneys and the parties thought the property was worth about $200,000 more than what it actually was worth. When I walked through, it had an empty pool. It was completely termite ridden. The heat wasn't working. The air conditioning wasn't working. And in this area, air conditioning is important. And there was just a ton of deferred maintenance. So it was worth about $200,000 less than what everybody thought. And again, the wife, because of my prequel, she was adamant she was keeping the property. Now, I said, hey, attorneys, we got a problem here. The wife is adamant she's keeping this house. I have these court orders. I'm going to do what the court orders say. However, it may be better that we look at this other option. Are we open to this conversation? Now, I also said to the husband, hey, it's not my place to interfere in this. I have court orders. I'm going to follow them. However, if this is a better situation for you, would you be open to letting her buy you out? Because this is what I think it's worth and everything else. And he said, well, yeah, because there was some savings, right? I still got a fee for coordinating all this, but like it was in everybody's best interest for her to actually keep the house, because it was just going to sell to an investor at like 80 cents on the dollar, right? So I went back to the attorneys. The attorneys wrote up a new agreement, new orders, a new stipulation, put it all together, and said she had 45 days to do the buyout, and if not, then it was to go on the market then. I worked with them. We were able to do the buyout arrangement, and everybody was happy, right? It was a happy ending for everybody.
Right.
Because I was working in the best interest of all the parties. But did I counsel them in that case? No. That usually my goal is that happens way earlier. And if attorney calls me and says, hey, this party, like I have another attorney who's I'm talking to later today. One of the parties wants to buy the other one out, but they're not sure they can do it. So I can say, hey, well, I can help connect you up to see if this is something that's viable for them to do. And then if so, we can move it forward. Otherwise, we don't waste, that way they don't waste time.
Right.
Because a lot of people think that they can buy out the house, but they actually can't. So,
Melinda,
yeah.
so Melinda, if that husband said, no, I don't want to get bought out.
Right.
And
Then be like, okay.
Okay, then we just go pursue the papers.
Well, then I have a different problem, right? She
Yeah.
doesn't want to sell the house, so she's not going to let anybody in the house. So now, again, it's all about problem solving. It's like, okay, I got to isolate my issues. In that particular case, my issue would have been she's not going to cooperate with showings because she wants to keep the house. So probably what would have happened is I would have taken my photos, I would have put it on the market, and she would have been like, nope, I'm not letting anybody in. Then I would have had to go back to the attorneys and say, she's not letting anybody in. And you guys, I'm at an impasse because I can't get anybody in the house. So either you need to kick her out, or force her to comply with sanctions or something. So it's trying to solve the problem internally first. But if I can't, I stay out of I'm not an attorney, right? I'm not the legal wrangler. That's going back to the attorneys, but my job is to know when it's my job to take it back to the attorneys and when I can resolve it myself.
Okay, thank you.
One last question, Melinda.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with gatekeepers?
What do you mean?
When you go to the law offices?
Oh, the attorneys? Bribe them with chocolate?
Seize candies on a bundle. Okay.
Well, I mean,
yes.
Again, if you go through the program, you end up putting together a package for the attorneys that you end up taking there and things like that. So, I have a CV, things like that the attorneys look at for experts. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the first things that I dropped off there. And then I followed up with them, right? So yeah, I talked to the gatekeepers, but now they know me. Like there's one There's one, they're almost always children of the owners or of one of the partners at the law firm, which is so funny to me. They're like 20 something children of the attorneys. But like now there's this one I walk into and she had, the attorney's daughter has like 3 dogs that are in the office and she's like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. So, they get to know you after a while.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions?
I have a last. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Melinda, thank you so much. This is Meg from the Castro Valley office.
Hi, Meg.
Hi. My question is, in the case of a buyout, how do you get paid?
Good question. It depends. And I don't want to get into too much of that because that's not the primary focus of this conversation today. And it's something that I'm still kind of figuring out. In that particular case, it was the attorney saying, well, she's still going to get paid. So we figured out what that fee was going to be based on that specific situation. But I wouldn't walk around saying, I help you do buyouts. No, don't do that. And besides, it's a lot of time to do that. That's not the primary focus of here.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing with buyouts is that if they're going to do it, ideally you want them to do it beforehand. And there's a lot of permanent orders, unfortunately, that say something along the lines of they can, one party can buy out the other up and through the sale. You don't want to be 3 weeks into a transaction and have the other party say, well, I'm going to buy the other person out. Now you're in a big mess because now you've got this other person with a order saying that they can, but now you have to figure out what to do because you're already under contract with somebody else. And that's not a good position to be in.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess you have to make arrangement with the attorney first before you go ahead with it, right?
Well, not
for your
that's
compensation.
the thing is like attorneys don't always understand real estate law. So sometimes we have to work under really interesting orders that like I said, I have orders right now that say properties to be sold and the parties are to cooperate. Well, he didn't cooperate. He was listed with another agent for 6 months. They didn't cooperate and they didn't take any offers that they got. And he now lives out of the country. I can't get a hold of him. Well, how is that cooperating?
Oh, no.
But that's only things in the orders and they're 3 years old. So I can't do anything about the past. All I can do is help them move forward now. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And try to educate the attorneys so that they don't do that again. That's the big thing. Cool. I think that's our time, right, Robert?
Yeah, so first of all, everybody do me a favor and unmute yourselves and give this woman the round of applause that she deserves. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you,
Melinda, this was great. And
Thank you. Thank you.
I was listening and I was taking down notes. And one of my favorite things that you said is we're not the referee of their emotions. That was a really great line in dealing, but I wrote down that that's probably a good line in any situation, not just divorces.
Right. We do all sorts of crazy stuff for our clients all the time, but we don't need to get involved in their emotions.
Yeah, that was a great line. Lots of great information. But the one thing I do want to make sure that everyone understands is, you have to be patient. You got to be active, but you have to be patient. So if you're just thinking, well, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to try this out for a month or two, and then if I don't get anything, I'm going to walk away. Just don't even start.
Don't bother.
Like this is a process. But if you plan on being in real estate in a few years, which I hope all of you are, unless you're no longer with Century 21 Masters, and I hope you're not. But 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 you got to put in the work for the long-term play. And like I said, this is like it's just like farming. It's those
Right.
things you have to put in the work, but over time could make a big impact. So I know the few of you, more of you have questions, but we're a little bit over time here, and I want to be respectful of Melinda's time. So Melinda, thank you, 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 a million times over. I appreciate you, and keep up all the amazing work.